So, like I said in a previous video, game companies are going to fail, and a couple of them have sort of indicated that they're going to be the first. So, you have some game companies that have suspended operations and maybe laid off staff. And that's Greater Than Games and Come On. However, it could just be that they are anticipating things and making decisions that will preserve them in the future. So maybe, in fact, the ones that aren't doing acting as Greater Than Games and Come On might be the ones that actually fail. There are other games that have indicated that there's problems, and of course there are, because there's massive tariffs from China, and you're making your stuff in China, and therefore there's going to be problems. You're either going to have to ask your customers to pay 2 to 3 times the price, or you're going to have to stop producing stuff until the tariffs go away and then not have any revenue for however long. And even if you do put out stuff and ask 2 to 3 times the price, you may still not have revenue because people won't want to pay that, and therefore you'll have costs that you can't pay back because you have no revenue. So a lot of companies are going to be having a lot of issues. And it's not a simple matter of just moving, to a different market, because a lot of them are in global markets already, but the United States, accounts for whatever percentage of their sales it accounts for, whether it's 30% or 60% or 90%. It's all bad if you lose any amount of that because you've planned for a certain amount and you've made decisions into the future based on a certain amount, and that's not going to happen. However, if they, maybe adjusted their planning back in September to December of last year and started to shift things, then maybe, assuming that, there was going to be bad things happening in the future, then maybe they'd be able to weather the storm a little bit better. But if they're just completely reacting to what happened, at the beginning of the month, then I don't know how they would survive if they're only in reaction mode. So there's a couple other companies that have indicated issues, like Cephalofair Games keeping some Gloomhaven in China in warehouses, and Atlas Games has talked about changing how their distribution works, and Sophisticated Games has just talked about their increased costs. Now, some other games, Stonemaier Games and a bunch of other companies have started a lawsuit for the tariffs. I really don't know where that would go, because it doesn't seem like you can really do anything, because, that's, there's separation of powers in the States. And yes, technically it was in, I guess, the House had that power, the Senate had that power, but they pass it on to the president at some point in time. And it's when the president has gained power, and the office of the president has gained power and uses those powers, taking those things to court and eventually getting to the Supreme Court usually shuts it down, saying that's now a power of the president. So I really don't see where a lawsuit with the president would go with these tariffs, because that's kind of the foreign policy of the United States. So I don't know. I don't know anything about that. And I don't really think many people do know anything about that. And I don't know. I don't even think the lawyers know what the outcome of that would be on either side, really. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But the point is that there's a bunch of companies, like I said, that have already shown weakness, and not shown weaknesses in their week, but that their potential sales for the year are weak, and they've made some changes, and that might help them weather the storm. But then there's other companies that are completely reactionary that may not weather the storm. So I guess we'll have to see what happens with all that. If you know anything more about other companies and other things that they've posted and stuff like that, because I'm not following everything, and I got a lot of stuff on my plate, so I miss some things. But am aware of some of the things going on with like Cephalofair and Stonemeyer and Greater Than Games and Come On, and I do see headlines from time to time. But I'd like to be more informed, so if you can help with that, just mention in the comments of stuff that you've seen online, and I'll take a look at it. But yeah, so at the very beginning of something that could be very bad for the tabletop industry, and we'll have to see where that goes, and hopefully things can get better for them. But have a good day.